Hello and welcome to the Support Squad Real Talk, and I am joined today by the lovely Rebecca Parfitt. So, Rebecca, tell us about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
Hi, it's good to be here. And my business is Parfitt Taylor. I'm an accountant. I've been in practice for 14 years, working with small businesses, helping them obviously with all things accounting. And then last year I started a side project, which is called Love Your Numbers. So for years I've been talking about helping small business owners understand their accounts in more detail. It's, for lots of people, they don't set up because they love the numbers. They set up because they're passionate about what they do. And then, I've been doing webinars about helping small businesses understand what their profit and loss means for them, what their balance sheet means, and small things that they can do to make their finances a bit better.
Cool. And today we are going to focus more so on Love Your Numbers as well. So I'm hoping by the end of this, at least myself and everyone watching will have a lot more clarity on the right numbers to be looking at. So my next question is, so how do we know each other?
I think this has been the same for all three, or now four questions. It's through networking. So the proof that networking works. So we met at, I think, the Connections Club, which is run by Barbara Hodgson. And we then got chatting and found out that we live quite close to each other. And as we both have dogs, we quite often bump into each other in the park.
We do. And
yeah.
I was going to say, your dog Barney has the amazing ability, was it habit, to carry multiple balls in his mouth. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that? Because he's now taught our dog Humphrey how to do that as well.
Yes, he likes to have at least two balls to play with when he goes around the park. He has a tennis ball and then he has a slightly bouncier ball. He likes to carry the tennis ball and chase the other one around the park. Yes.
Yes, and Humphrey is a bit of a ball stealer, so it can be a little bit problematic when he decides that he wants one of Barney's balls. So any dog walkers watching who have a ball-obsessed dog will understand that you have to always walk with spare balls, because you sometimes have to tempt them away from the new shiny sparkly ball. It's not theirs and is always more exciting than their own ball. Anyway, right. So what is one sort of fun or perhaps unexpected fact about you that people may not know about you?
So staying on the dog theme, it's that I do man trailing, which we've also met at as well. So
I'm just going to add a picture to the stage so people can see what that is.
So when I say I do man trailing, most people are like, "What is man trailing?" It sounds like a bit like a dodgy dating thing, but it's a bit like an amateur search and rescue. So we the dogs follow a trail set by a person. In this case, it was Suzanne that Bonnie's now sat next to. And then when they find the person, they do an indication to say that they found the right person, which is why he's sitting. But yeah, it's really good for the dogs, because particularly for high energy dogs like collies and Labradors, because it's wears them out, makes them use their brain, and just wears them out. It goes to sleep for a couple of hours after we've been doing some trailing.
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I can't remember how I think we were looking for something to do to tire Humphrey out, and we kept man trailing, and it is fascinating. So there's a ritual, isn't there, where they at the start where they smell the scented item. So the person's already disappeared, and then they smell that scented item from that person, and then the way they sort of trail them to find it is phenomenal.
It is amazing how well they can do it. I can't remember the numbers, but their sense of smell is so much stronger than ours, and they can just they can pick out the scent.
Yeah, I mean, crossing roads and going up and down alleys here, it is amazing. So there we go. So that's our fun fact. So if we go on to sort of like a bit more detail about Love Your Numbers, what's the biggest mistake you perhaps see small business owners making around the numbers in their business?
There's quite a few. One is thinking that they can do it all themselves, which So for some businesses, it is very simple and straightforward. But there's also all that information that you don't know that you don't know. So whereas you think you may be claiming for everything that you can, actually accountants have got such a wealth of knowledge and experience because we're used to dealing with this day by day, that actually we can always help, and there's always something that we realise people aren't claiming for. But it's so easy these days to set up a business, and particularly for limited companies, it's so easy to set up a limited company. And lots of people think, oh yeah, that's simple, I can do that. But actually it's getting the structure right at the beginning. It's not quite so easy to change it if you do get it wrong. And there's lots of things that I come across that I think, actually, if you'd asked an accountant, actually we could have saved you some time and effort. And there's things like, a few times I've come across this, is changing because they wanted to change the company name, they've actually set up a new company.
Oh,
Instead of just changing the name of the previous business, which I've come across a few times. But there's also a few things around when you're setting up about the number of shares and making that easier for future changes, which always come up. But it's also, there's things like keeping on top of direct debits and things that go out to your account frequently, because they're one of the things that I always say is the first thing to look at if you haven't looked at your accounts for a while, is looking at what the money that is going out of your bank account, particularly direct debits, because they tend to go out, we don't see them, or we see them and we think, oh yeah, that's fine. But sometimes you don't always realise actually we're paying duplicate things without actually sitting down and going through it. And also if you're paying for different subscriptions to different people, sometimes they cross over. So I started using Microsoft more for everything, because I realised actually I was paying for things like Calendly, but then I can do that through Microsoft, and lots of different things. And I've even stopped my Zoom subscription and use Teams for everything. So I use that for webinars and for meetings. So yeah, there's little things and it's the little things that add up. People think, it's the big stuff and you need to worry about that and a bit more, but actually it's the little stuff that can make a difference to your bottom line.
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. I've recently done the same. I was paying for Zoom. I also pay for it in Microsoft Business. Like you say, you've got Teams. So yeah, and you can use Microsoft Bookings, which I've changed all that on my website. So yeah, it's a really handy tip. I wanted to come back to what you were saying about expenses. Is there sort of one kind of expense that you find that people aren't necessarily claiming for that they should?
Yes, it tends to be working from home expenses, particularly for sole traders. So knowing what you can claim and how much you can claim. It can be slightly complicated, and there is a simple expense where you can claim up to £26 a month. It's based on how many working hours you do each month, and you don't have to provide any documentation or any backup. So if HMRC came to you, you can say, well, yes, I'm claiming the simple expense allowance for working from home. And that's the only thing they might query is how many hours you are actually working from home, because there is three amounts. But actually you can claim for your actual expenses, but you need to work out a percentage. So I have a sheet that I send to my clients, but it's working out how much you're spending on things like utilities and stuff, and then you can work out how many rooms you've got and then how much of a percentage you're using. So it is slightly more complicated, but actually, particularly the way utilities have gone up in the last couple of years, actually sometimes it's worth putting that little bit of effort into.
Because we're all paying for Wi-Fi, aren't we? Those of us who work from home, we've probably got a business package. And then we are, not necessarily at the moment, but a lot of people have their heating on, don't they, in their home office, because we all know what it's like when you're sitting at home at a desk not moving. You do start to get quite cold. I don't know about you, but I have an array of fleeces on my chair for when I start to feel a bit chilly.
A client bought me a one that goes around my neck, which is a warmer. You can stick in the microwave, which is great.
I've got my scarf on. That's my sort of start of the temperatures changing. Okay, no, I just wanted to check because I thought people watching might sort of think, oh yeah, what should I be looking at? And that's a really good tip as well, looking at your direct debits. And I would say the same would apply for your personal
yes, definitely,
bank account. Just as a sort of slight aside, been dealing with a family member who died, and we found out that they were paying twice for their internet, but because it was via direct debit, they'd got no idea. So I think it's a really good thing to sort of check at least quarterly what's going on and what's happening, and the same applies for your business. Okay, great. So possibly slightly, we might have already answered this, but my next question is, what's one simple thing somebody can do today to make a real difference to how they can love their numbers in their business?
I think the biggest thing is not leaving it to the last minute, because actually that gives people so much stress, and I think when you're doing everything at the last minute, it becomes so much of a bigger thing, because actually you're rushing, and we all know that when we leave things to the last minute, we've got a deadline, and I love working to a deadline. I can quite happily leave things to the last minute, and if you know what you're doing, that's fine. But if you're still having to collate information, or
you talking about doing the accounts or tax return, or all of it? Okay.
Yeah, it's leaving it to the last minute just adds to the stress. So, and then people become even worked up about it, and then it becomes a bigger thing. And then when you come around to it next year, you remember that stress, and that feeling of, oh my God, I couldn't do it. I left it to the last minute. So actually doing it earlier, or doing it little and often. I always say little and often for everything. We're Making Tax Digital is something we were going to talk about maybe later, but the Making Tax Digital is a big change for people that are sole traders.
Talk about it now.
Let's talk about it. So Making Tax Digital is for sole traders or landlords. So if you've got income from either of those and you submit a self-assessment to HMRC, then depending on how much money you're earning, you will need to submit quarterly returns to HMRC. So it starts from April next year. The threshold for April next year is based on what you're submitting for 24-25, so what you're submitting now. And if your sales, so it's not based on your profit, it's based on your sales, is over 50,000, and that can be just a sole trader income, or if you've got sole trader income and property income, that amount combined, then you're going to have to start submitting quarterly returns. So that's going to be a big change for a lot of sole traders.
Is this just for sole traders? If you're a limited company,
you don't need to worry if you're a limited company, or if you're a partnership. It's not partnerships yet either. It will be eventually, but not yet. And if you have joint property income, then it applies to joint property income, but you only have to include your part of the income in when you're working out thresholds. So for a lot of sole traders, particularly if they're not VAT registered, would leave everything until the last minute, and quite often be doing it in January, where some of the information could be over 20 something months old, and you're kind of like trying to work out what you did April a year and a bit ago. So doing it little and often, and keeping it up to date, I think is one of the biggest things that people can do. And that's that doesn't matter whether you're a sole trader or a limited company, but obviously if you are a sole trader, then that's going to be a big change, and people need to start thinking about how that change is coming in. But it should be a positive thing. It should be you'll be able to see how much your tax estimate is each quarter after you've submitted your accounts to HMRC, but that means people won't have that struggle of getting to January a year and a bit later and finding, well, actually I've got tax to pay. So yes. Yeah, little and often is always my biggest tip.
Do you want to talk about your upcoming webinar while we're talking about that?
Yeah, you can do. So I did a webinar last week, and I'm going to be doing it again in November. This one will be an evening one, I think, for a lot of sole traders. They're working during the day, so this one is going to be in the evening for people that couldn't make the last one. And what we're covered and what we'll be covering again is the how to work out your threshold when you're likely to be having to submit your returns, so when that's mandated from, the things that you need to do, what you need to think about, how you can plan ahead, and changes that you can make now, changes you can make if you're VAT registered. So if you're already making quarterly VAT returns, it's obviously much easier, and this process won't be too great a change, but there are some things you need to think about. The exemptions, so there are some exemptions, and also what the penalty regime will be changing, so how that will impact penalties and what they will look like. So yes, and information about which software you may want to think about using, and also whether you can use spreadsheets.
Interesting. So I would encourage any sole traders watching this to register for the next webinar. And if you are a limited company, then I'm sure you'll know people that are sole traders. So please send the words. We will put the link in the comment section after the live is finished. So just wanted to people know that. So just leave that on there for a little while so people can have a look at it. So my next question is, what do you wish more people understood about your role or specialism? Whether you want to cover Love Your Numbers and accountancy together, completely up to you.
That we're not mind readers is maybe one of them. I think it's difficult when you're working with small businesses and you work with a range of small businesses. There is a huge amount of variety in how different businesses are treated for tax and VAT and all the other kind of taxes. So sometimes, sometimes it's difficult to stay on top of everything, and it is, obviously we do, and do a huge amount of CPD as small business owners ourselves. So staying on top of professional development and understanding, and there's a huge amount of changes obviously going on with Companies House at the moment. HMRC keep changing things. So in the best way in the world, I'd love to be on top of everything. It's not always possible. And sometimes I find clients don't always understand that, and even speaking to people that are wanting to move accountants, sometimes it's actually, have you had a conversation with your accountant and actually communicated how you're feeling and what you've said? Because actually sometimes it's just a question of them not understanding the process or not just spoken about it. So I think communication's key. And sometimes I find business owners can be want to have to keep everything quite close to their chest. And actually, you have to trust your accountant. You have to be able to say, actually, either this isn't going well, or I'm worried about this, or because actually we can't help you if you're not telling us those things. Sometimes you come across people that actually just, they don't want to tell you everything, or they want to only do bits of it, and it's just actually that's not how it works. We need to know what's going on to be able to give you the proper advice. Yes.
And I'm going to go slightly off piece, so brace yourself. No, it's not that bad. So one of the things when we were talking about doing this live that you sort of shocked me with when we were talking about it is that you shared with me that there are people who will say they're an accountant but don't actually have accountancy qualifications, which was something that massively shocked me. I was kind of like, I didn't even know that was a thing. So can you sort of, for those of us who aren't accountants, what sort of qualifications are there? So what should somebody be looking for when they want to work with an accountant or move to a new accountant? What the difference? Because you sort of, people have different letters after their name. So what can you sort of shed a bit of light on what all that means?
Yes, I mean, there's quite a variety of different qualifications out there, but unlike financial services, accountants, and it's not a regulated industry.
Wow.
So anybody can say they're an accountant. And there are generally people out there who are accountants who don't have any qualifications and who are great at their job. And in the same way, there are probably qualified accountants out there who probably aren't so great at their job. But using a qualified accountant gives you a bit more confidence. One, they have passed exams. They have they're registered with an accounting body, so you have the backup of their accounting body. If anything goes wrong, you can go to that accounting body. But also, when somebody's a qualified accountant, they also sign up to ethics and professional standards. And also, we have to do the continuing professional development. So we have to constantly stay on top of everything. And being a part of a accounting body helps us with that. So there is different qualifications. There's the chartered accountant, who are the ones that tend to be in the big accountant firms. You've got certified accountants who tend to be a bit of a mix. They sometimes work within businesses, so industry, but also work in practice. So they're a bit of a mix. And then you have management accountants, which is what I am. So originally, I worked in industry, and that's where you'll find most management accountants. And then there's a small but growing percentage of us that now work in practice. But we've all our background is from working within businesses. So we understand how businesses work, and slightly different viewpoint. And then you've also got tax qualifications. So there's two different tax qualifications. One's a tax technician and one's a tax advisor kind of role. And then you also have the kind of bookkeeping qualifications, which are AAT usually, which is usually bookkeeping plus accounts. So they're kind of a mix, but they tend to deal mainly with sole traders or simple limited companies.
I mean, I was sort of well-used phrase, isn't it? But I was gobsmacked when you told me that. So hopefully that section is really helpful for anybody who wants to understand. And I'm sure Rebecca will happily answer any questions if people have got anything. Keep checking the comments. Nothing's come through yet. So my next question is, what is the right time to bring an accountant into somebody's business? We've touched on some of this already, but I think it's important to perhaps reiterate that.
Yeah, I'm always going to say the beginning, but but it is so much easier if you have an accountant at the beginning, even if it is just having a conversation with an accountant at the beginning, just understanding what the process is and what the key dates are that you need to worry about. People can get a few months into their business and haven't submitted a VAT return when they've registered for VAT, but not realise actually, even though they haven't done any business, actually they still needed to submit the VAT return, or registered for payroll. As soon as you start registering, as soon as you're registered for payroll, you need to submit returns, even if it's a nil return. So it's things like that kind of catch people out. But also understanding how much to put aside for tax and things like that. People don't necessarily think about it or think about how much they should be putting aside. I always say from the beginning, just even if it's just a conversation, just so you can understand what you need to be thinking about. It's easy to get, a year or so down the line, I need an accountant to prepare my accounts. Actually, we can add so much more value than just preparing your accounts. Yes, from the beginning.
No, that's really helpful. And you sort of touched on it, I think, when we were talking about making tax digital. What's your view sort of on accountancy software? Because I know some people, when they start out, would perhaps use a spreadsheet, but there's lots of different software. There's Sage, there's QuickBooks, there's Xero. I'm sure there's some others I'm forgotten. Do most accountants work with all those software? Do they specialize with one? I mean, what one or ones do you work with?
It varies quite a lot. I think that, larger firms of accountants probably can do most of them, just because actually they've got the numbers in their team to be able to cover most of them. Smaller accountants, I find, tend to specialize in one or two. I prefer Xero, but I also use QuickBooks and Free Agent. I must admit, I don't like Sage particularly. So it's tend to be one that I avoid, though I do have a couple of clients on it. But yeah, Xero has always been my preferred one. It's and I think, if you're using software, it saves time. So although it can feel like quite a large cost, particularly when you're starting out and you're trying to keep your expenses low, actually it should save you time on what you're doing. So things like with they all pretty much work the same these days. You'd have you can have your bank feed so that all your bank transactions are automatically coming into your software. So I'd always recommend, even if you're a sole trader, that you have a separate account just for your business. And if you've got multiple businesses, have a separate account for each one, because that makes it so much easier for doing your accounts. And you can code each transaction individually to where you need to go. You can also add copies of the receipts. If you're sending out invoices, you can do that from your software. So you've got a nice professional looking invoice. You can email it directly to the client. And also that means you can do things on a much more timely basis as well. So that little and often, you can do that, little and often. You can also, so when you're matching invoices and payments, much easier to stay on top of whether somebody's actually paid you or not. So I had a client years ago who did everything on spreadsheet, and she was adamant it was fine. She's got a really simple business. She didn't send out that many invoices. I did her accounts at the end of the year. I was like, you haven't been paid for these. And she was like, oh. And it was quite a lot of money. And it was just like, yeah. So actually, you might think, your business is quite simple and you're on top of everything, but it's easy when you're busy with, work and seeing clients, to actually let some of those things slide, and actually having something in front of you that's really visual, which I find with Xero is, for anybody who hasn't used Xero, you have a dashboard, and you can quite easily see which invoices and how much is outstanding. And also you can also see how much you need to pay out, so you can add bills that you need to pay. It's quite easy to see then how much you need to pay. And if you're doing VAT returns, then you need to be using software. Really, you can use spreadsheets, but it's a bit more complicated. And the problem with spreadsheets is that obviously you can overwrite values, you can overwrite formulas. So something that's working really well might be working really well until a few months down the line, and you realise actually you've managed to delete a formula and it's not actually adding up and doing something weird. I've even I worked with an accountant when I first started, and I was doing helping him out with some accounts, and even one of his spreadsheets, the formula didn't add everything up, and I was like, oh my god. This is for an accountant. So it's easy to do, even when you think you know what the numbers are, to actually realise actually it's not adding every line up. Software.
I think we've probably all had that, haven't we, with Excel or Google Sheets?
Oh yeah, so easy to do. Yeah,
easy to do. Okay, and then my last question, but you have already a couple of stories, so hopefully you've got another one to share. Can you share a little story or an example of someone you've helped and the difference that it's made?
Yes, I have a client who calls me her finance hero.
Love that.
Because it's not just about obviously preparing a set of accounts, but actually helping the client with understanding what they need to pay in tax, what they can pay themselves, and it's just that, and what money they need to put aside. So, I mean, lots of businesses have been struggling this year, and finding work has been slower to come in. So actually, she's been in a really good position where she has got money put aside. She knows how much tax to pay. She's got to pay. She knows how much she needs to keep aside to pay her subcontractors, but also that she's been able to keep going and pay herself while business has been a bit slower this year. So yes, it's all those extra bits that really add value to a client.
Oh, that's really good. Okay, so I keep checking comments, just having a look on my phone to make sure I wasn't missing anything. So we haven't had any comments. So now, if you have got a question, there's quite a few people watching live. If you have got a question for Rebecca, please pop it on now so I can see it before we end. Before we do that, I will just go through where you can find Rebecca. So this is Rebecca on LinkedIn. People have a look at that, but anybody watching live, you can, where it says speakers, you can click on Rebecca's picture and it will take you through to her. I think we have had this one up already, but this is Rebecca's accountancy website, so Parfitt Taylor. And then she also has a showcase page for her Love Your Numbers project. Were you calling it side project? Is that?
Yes, side project at the moment. Yeah.
And then you've also got a website for that as well, which is great. And then just to put on here, this is your webinar that you are running in November. If anybody would like to sign up to that, that is the booking details there. So not had any questions come through, but like I said, we've shared Rebecca's details. So drop her a DM on LinkedIn or reach out to her via her website if you've got any questions. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you, everybody. Have lunch, and it is the last in the series of Support Squad for now. I'm scheming on some new ideas. So if anybody's got anything they particularly want to see, then drop me a DM. Thank you.